Ruby dust kicked up beneath Genevieve Dawson's boots as she strode down Silver Creek's Main Street, each step attracting whispers that chased her like shadows. "There she goes again," they said, "the Temptress of Silver Creek." But what the gossips of this frontier town couldn't see was the weight of responsibility bearing down on her shoulders and the determination in her eyes that had nothing to do with the men whose heads turned as she passed. Silver Creek, Arizona Territory. 1878 was a place where a woman's reputation could be built or destroyed on nothing more than speculation. For Genevieve, her reputation had been decided the moment she'd stepped off the stagecoach 3 months ago. Hair the color of burnished copper and eyes that reflected the vast turquoise skies overhead. She'd arrived alone, no husband, no father, no brother, just a small trunk of possessions and enough money to purchase the dilapidated building at the edge of town that she'd transformed into a modest dress shop. "Miss Dawson," Sheriff Parker tipped his hat as she passed, his eyes lingering a moment too long on the curve of her waist. "Fine day, isn't it?" "Indeed, Sheriff," Genevieve replied coolly, not slowing her pace. She'd learned that prolonged conversation only fueled the rumors. The sheriff cleared his throat. "Heard you've been getting some fancy fabrics in from back east. The ladies of Silver Creek are all abuzz." "I have." Her response was clipped, professional. "If your wife would like to see them, I'm open until sundown." The sheriff's face reddened slightly. "Yes. Well, perhaps she'll stop by." Genevieve nodded and continued on her way, ignoring the stares from the men lounging outside the saloon. 3 months in this town, and not one person had bothered to look beyond her appearance to see who she truly was. Not one had wondered why a 26-year-old woman would leave everything behind to start anew in this dusty, unforgiving land. As she approached her shop, she noticed a man she hadn't seen before tying his horse to the post outside the general store across the street. Tall and broad-shouldered, he moved with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to hard work and wide open spaces. His dark hat was pulled low, shading his features, but something in his posture caught her attention, a stillness, a sense of watchfulness that seemed at odds with the casual swagger of most of the men in town. Pushing the stranger from her mind, Genevieve entered her shop, the small bell above the door announcing her return. Inside, the space was cool and inviting, bolts of fabric arranged by color and texture, creating a rainbow effect against the rough wooden walls. Her assistant, Mary, a girl of 19 with mousy brown hair and quick fingers, was helping a customer examine a length of blue calico. "Miss Dawson," Mary called, "Mrs. Henderson is looking for something special for her daughter's wedding next month." Mrs. Henderson, the banker's wife and one of the few women in town who dared to patronize Genevieve's shop openly, offered a tight smile. "Good afternoon, Miss Dawson. I was just telling Mary that Emily needs something appropriate, nothing too flamboyant, you understand." "Of course," Genevieve said smoothly, moving toward the shelves where she kept her finer fabrics. "For a June wedding, perhaps this ivory silk. It's just arrived from San Francisco." She pulled down a bolt of fabric that caught the light like morning frost on a window. Mrs. Henderson touched it tentatively. "It's lovely, but perhaps a bit ostentatious." "Not at all," Genevieve assured her. "With a simple design, high collar, modest sleeves, it would be the picture of propriety. The beauty would be in the quality of the fabric itself, not in any revealing cut." As she spoke, the bell above the door jingled again, and Genevieve glanced up to see the stranger from outside step into her shop. In the softer light indoors, she could see him more clearly, a face weathered by sun and wind but handsome in a rugged way, with dark eyes that took in the room in one sweeping glance. Mrs. Henderson followed Genevieve's gaze and stiffened slightly. I'll think about the silk, she said hastily. My husband would need to approve such an expense. She nodded curtly to Mary. Good day. As Mrs. Henderson brushed past the newcomer, he stepped aside, removing his hat in a gesture of respect that seemed almost out of place in Silver Creek. He held it in large, calloused hands, working hands, not the smooth palms of a gambler or a dandy. Can I help you? Genevieve asked, her voice professional but guarded. The man cleared his throat. I hope so, madam. Name's Liam Grayson. I'm looking for something for my sister. She's getting married next month over in Mesa Ridge. I see, Genevieve replied, studying him. Most men sent their wives or daughters to her shop. They didn't come themselves. What sort of item did you have in mind? Liam Grayson looked momentarily lost, as though he'd only now realized he was standing in a shop full of ladies' things. She mentioned needing what did she call it? A trousseau. He pronounced the French word carefully as though he'd practiced it. Despite herself, Genevieve smiled. A trousseau is quite an undertaking, Mr. Grayson. It includes all manner of items a bride might need for her new life. He nodded, seeming relieved that she understood. That's it then. Sarah, my sister, she's been raising me since our parents died. Never had time for herself. Now that she's finally getting married, I want her to have something nice, something she wouldn't buy for herself. There was something in the way he spoke about his sister, a genuine affection and concern that made Genevieve reassess him. Perhaps a nightgown and robe, she suggested. Something fine but practical. Liam's ears reddened slightly. That sounds appropriate. She's about your height, I'd say, though not as. He gestured vaguely, then seemed to think better of it. She's a bit broader in the shoulder, works a small ranch with me. I think I have just the thing, Genevieve said, moving toward a chest where she kept her completed garments. She withdrew a nightgown and matching robe in a soft cream-colored cotton, embroidered with tiny blue flowers around the collar and cuffs. These are simple, but the fabric is very good quality and the embroidery is hand-worked. Liam touched the material tentatively, as though afraid his rough fingers might damage it. This is real nice. How much? Genevieve named her price, and to her surprise, he didn't haggle. He simply nodded and reached into his pocket for the money. Would you like it wrapped? She asked, as Mary watched the interaction with poorly disguised curiosity. Yes, please, he said. And maybe you could write her name on it. Sarah Grayson, soon to be Sarah Mitchell. Of course. Genevieve took the garments to her counter, wrapping them carefully in tissue paper before placing them in a box. She wrote the name in her neat hand on a small card and tied it to the package with a blue ribbon. Liam paid and accepted the package. Thank you, Miss Dawson. Genevieve Dawson. Miss Dawson. He nodded, replacing his hat. Sarah will be pleased, I'm sure. As he turned to leave, the door opened again, and 3 men entered Cowboys from the Circle D ranch outside of town, still dusty from the trail and smelling of whiskey even at this early hour. Well, look here, said the tallest of the 3, a man named Wilson whom Genevieve had had the misfortune to encounter before. If it isn't the prettiest shopkeeper in the territory. His eyes slid over her in a way that made her skin crawl. Liam Grayson paused, his posture subtly shifting. Gentlemen, Genevieve said coolly, unless you're here to purchase ladies' garments, I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to leave. Wilson grinned, revealing tobacco-stained teeth. Maybe we are. Maybe we're looking for something pretty for a lady friend, something like what you might wear. Mary edged closer to Genevieve, her young face tense. I think the lady asked you to leave, Liam said quietly, but with an unmistakable authority in his voice. Wilson's grin faded as he took in Liam's size and the steady look in his eyes. Didn't realize we were interrupting, Cowboy. You're not, Liam replied evenly. But this is a respectable business and the ladies deserve to be treated as such. For a moment, the air in the shop seemed to crackle with tension. Then Wilson shrugged. "Come on, boys. Nothing here worth our time anyway." He spat on the floor before sauntering out, his companions following. Liam regarded the glob of tobacco on Genevieve's clean floor with disgust. "Apologies for that, Miss Dawson. Some men weren't raised right." "It's not your place to apologize for them, Mr. Grayson," Genevieve said, though she couldn't help feeling grateful for his intervention. "But thank you all the same." He nodded, then surprised her by kneeling down, using his own handkerchief to wipe up the spittle from the floor. "Mr. Grayson," Genevieve exclaimed, "you don't need to do that." "No trouble," he said, standing and tucking the soiled handkerchief away. "My sister would have my hide if she saw me leave a mess like that for a lady to clean up." He tipped his hat. "Good day to you both." After he left, Mary let out a long breath. "Well, he's not from around here, that's certain sure." "No," Genevieve agreed, watching through the window as Liam Grayson mounted his horse, a fine chestnut gelding, and rode off down the street. "No, he's not." The rest of the day passed uneventfully, and by closing time, Genevieve had nearly forgotten the encounter with the stranger. She sent Mary home and stayed to tally the day's receipts and straighten the shop. The spring days were growing longer, and sunset painted the street outside in shades of gold and crimson as she prepared to lock up. The sound of approaching footsteps made her pause, her hand on the door. Through the glass, she could see Wilson and his companions returning, moving with the loose-limbed swagger of men who'd spent the afternoon drinking. Genevieve's pulse quickened. She could lock the door, but the simple bolt wouldn't hold if they were determined to enter. The sheriff's office was at the far end of the street, and most of the neighboring businesses were already closed. Wilson rapped on the door, his face pressed against the glass. "Open up, Miss Dawson. We've decided we do want to buy something after all." "We're closed," she called through the door. "Come back tomorrow." "Now that's not very hospitable," Wilson slurred, trying the handle. "A businesswoman like you should be eager for customers." Genevieve backed away, looking around for anything she could use to defend herself. The fabric scissors on her workbench were the closest thing to a weapon. The sound of hoofbeats drew her attention back to the street. Liam Grayson was riding toward her shop, leading a pack horse loaded with supplies. He pulled up sharply at the sight of the men at her door. "Everything all right here?" he called, dismounting in one fluid motion. Wilson turned, his face darkening. "Mind your own business, stranger. We're just having a friendly conversation with Miss Dawson." "Doesn't look friendly from where I'm standing," Liam replied, his voice calm but carrying an edge of steel. "And I believe the lady said she's closed." One of Wilson's companions, a squat man with a patchy beard, stepped forward. "You looking for trouble, mister?" "Not at all," Liam said, keeping his hands visible but his stance ready. "Just looking to make sure there isn't any." Genevieve seized the moment to throw the bolt on the door, the click drawing Wilson's attention back to her. His expression hardened. "This isn't over," he muttered, but he and his friends moved away, casting dark glances at Liam as they crossed the street toward the saloon. Genevieve hesitated, then opened the door. "Mr. Grayson," he approached, leading his horses. "Miss Dawson, hope I didn't overstep." "Not at all," she assured him. "Thank you for your timely arrival." "Just happened to be passing by," he said, though they both knew that was unlikely, given that he'd already left town earlier. "Those men bother you often?" "Occasionally," she admitted. "The sheriff doesn't take it very seriously." Liam frowned. "Where are you headed now?" "Home. I have rooms above the shop." He nodded, glancing toward the saloon where Wilson and his friends had disappeared. "Would you mind if I walked with you to your door?" "Just to be certain there's no more trouble." Under normal circumstances, Genevieve would have declined. Being seen with a man, especially an unknown one, would only add fuel to the town's gossip. But the memory of Wilson's face pressed against her door glass made her nod. "I'd appreciate that, Mr. Grayson. Liam, please." "Liam," she conceded. "I'll just need to gather my things and lock up properly." He waited patiently as she collected her ledger and secured the shop, then led his horses alongside her as they walked around to the side of the building where a narrow staircase led to her living quarters. "I'm just passing through," Liam explained as they walked, "on my way back to Mesa Ridge after picking up supplies. Was planning to camp outside town tonight and head out at first light." "There's a decent boarding house 2 streets over," Genevieve suggested. "Mrs. Fletcher runs it. She's fair with her prices." "I might do that," Liam said, though he seemed unconcerned about where he'd sleep. "Been on the trail a while. A real bed might be nice." They reached her door and Genevieve turned to face him. In the deepening twilight, with his hat pushed back on his head, she could see his features more clearly: the straight nose, the firm jaw shadowed with stubble, and eyes that were not dark as she'd first thought, but a deep, clear green. "Thank you again for your help," she said, suddenly aware of how alone they were in the gathering darkness. "It was nothing," he replied, his voice low. "But those men," he frowned. "You might want to be careful. That Wilson fellow didn't look like he was planning to let things go." "I've dealt with his kind before," Genevieve said with more confidence than she felt. Liam studied her face for a moment. "I don't doubt it. Still, maybe I'll stay in town an extra day just to be sure there's no trouble." The offer surprised her, not just the content, but the sincerity behind it. "That's very kind, but unnecessary. I wouldn't want to delay your journey." "My sister's not expecting me for a few more days," he said easily. "And I promised her I'd make sure her gift was just right. Might need your expert opinion tomorrow if that's all right." Genevieve found herself smiling despite her reservations. "My shop opens at 9. I'll be there." He tipped his hat. "Good night, Miss Dawson." "Good night, Liam." She watched him lead his horses away, his tall figure gradually blending with the shadows. Only when he'd disappeared around the corner did she enter her rooms, bolting the door securely behind her. Alone in her small living quarters, Genevieve lit a lamp and moved to the window, gazing out at the now quiet street. Silver Creek slumbered beneath a blanket of stars, looking peaceful despite the undercurrents she knew ran through it. This town had not been what she'd hoped when she'd chosen it as her fresh start, but it was hers now, her shop, her livelihood, her independence. She'd survived worse than the likes of Wilson and his cronies. And yet, as she prepared for bed, she found her thoughts returning not to the unpleasant encounter with the cowboys, but to the unexpected kindness of a stranger passing through. Liam Grayson, with his quiet authority and consideration, was different from the men she'd encountered since arriving in Silver Creek. Different, too, from the men she'd known back in Boston. She touched the pendant at her throat, a small silver locket that had belonged to her mother, and wondered, not for the first time, if she'd made the right choice in coming so far west. But there was no going back, not after what had happened. Only forward, one day at a time. With that thought, she extinguished the lamp and slipped beneath the covers, listening to the distant sounds of the town settling for the night, unaware that the arrival of Liam Grayson would change the course of her life in ways she couldn't begin to imagine. Morning brought with it a cacophony of sounds that Genevieve had grown accustomed to: the clatter of wagons on the street below, the calls of merchants setting up their wares, the distant lowing of cattle being driven to new pastures. She rose with the sun, her routine well established after 3 months in Silver Creek. As she dressed in a practical blue skirt and white shirtwaist, Her thoughts drifted to the previous evening and the promise of Liam Grayson to return to her shop. Part of her hoped he would keep his word. Another part, more cautious and shaped by experience, warned against putting any faith in the promises of men, no matter how seemingly honorable. After a simple breakfast, she descended to her shop, using the quiet hour before opening to sweep the floors and arrange new displays. Mary arrived at 8:30, cheeks flushed from her brisk walk. "Morning, Miss Dawson," she chirped, hanging her shawl on a peg by the door. "You'll never guess what I heard on my way in." Genevieve smiled indulgently. Mary was an excellent assistant and a sweet girl, but she did love her gossip. "What news has Silver Creek provided this morning?" "It's about that cowboy who was in yesterday, Mr. Grayson. Apparently, he got into a scuffle with Wilson and his bunch at the saloon last night. Knocked Wilson clear through the batwing doors, according to my brother who saw the whole thing." Genevieve's hand stilled on the bolt of fabric she was adjusting. "Was anyone hurt?" "Just Wilson's pride, from what I hear. Sheriff didn't even get involved, said it was a fair fight and Wilson had it coming." Mary lowered her voice conspiratorially. "And get this, Mr. Grayson is staying at Mrs. Fletcher's boarding house, and he told her he's a rancher from Mesa Ridge. Owns a good piece of land there with his sister and brother-in-law to be. He's not just some drifter." "I see," Genevieve said, absorbing this information. So Liam Grayson had taken her suggestion about the boarding house and apparently defended her honor at the saloon, though he hadn't mentioned any intention of confronting Wilson. "Well, that's all very interesting, but we have work to do. Mrs. Cooper is coming in for a fitting this morning, and I still need to finish the tucks on her bodice." The morning passed quickly, with a steady stream of customers, mostly women, buying necessities like thread and buttons, though a few were brave enough to commission actual garments. Genevieve was adjusting a sleeve pattern when the shop door opened and Liam Grayson stepped inside, hat in hand. "Miss Dawson," he greeted her, nodding to Mary as well. "Hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all," Genevieve replied, setting aside her work. "Mary, would you mind finishing that pattern? I need to help Mr. Grayson." Mary's eyes darted between them, bright with curiosity, but she nodded obediently. "Of course, Miss Dawson." Genevieve moved to the counter. "I understand there was some excitement at the saloon last night," she said quietly, keeping her voice from carrying to the two older women examining lace at the far end of the shop. A flicker of embarrassment crossed Liam's face. "Word travels fast in a small town." "It does indeed." "Was that necessary?" "Probably not," he admitted. "But Wilson was running his mouth about you in a way no decent man should tolerate. Figured he needed a reminder about respecting ladies." Genevieve sighed. "While I appreciate the sentiment, Mr. Grayson, I've been managing just fine on my own. Getting into brawls on my behalf is more likely to damage my reputation than help it." Liam frowned. "I didn't think of it that way. I apologize if I've made things difficult for you." His genuine contrition softened her. "No real harm done, I suppose. Now, did you actually need something from my shop today, or was this visit purely to check on my welfare?" A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "A bit of both, if I'm honest. I was thinking about what else Sarah might need for her wedding. Any suggestions? Perhaps a handkerchief. Something with her new initials that she could carry on her wedding day." Genevieve moved to a display case where she kept smaller items. "I have some fine linen ones here, and I could embroider her initials before you leave tomorrow." "That would be perfect," Liam said, examining the delicate squares of fabric. "She'd like this one, I think." He pointed to a handkerchief edged with a simple but elegant lace. "An excellent choice. And her new initials will be SM, correct?" "That's right. Sarah Mitchell." His expression softened when he spoke of his sister. She's been like a mother to me since I was 12. I owe her more than I could ever repay." Genevieve was struck by the depth of feeling in his voice. "It sounds like you have a wonderful relationship." "We do. She gave up a lot to raise me after our parents died. Could have married years ago, but she was determined to see me established first. Now it's my turn to make sure she's taken care of." As he spoke, the shop door opened again, and Sheriff Parker entered, his gaze immediately fixing on Liam with a wariness that suggested he'd heard about the previous night's altercation. "Morning, Miss Dawson," the sheriff said, deliberately ignoring Liam at first. "Everything all right here?" "Perfectly fine, Sheriff," Genevieve replied coolly. "Mr. Grayson is a customer." The sheriff nodded slowly, finally acknowledging Liam with a curt "Grayson." "Sheriff," Liam returned evenly. "Heard there was some trouble at the Eagle last night." "Nothing serious," Liam said. "Just a misunderstanding that's been settled." Sheriff Parker studied him for a moment. "Wilson's the kind to hold a grudge. He and his boys work for Harold Dawkins at the Circle D, one of the most powerful men in the county. Might be wise to move on before there's any more misunderstandings." The warning was clear, but Liam didn't appear intimidated. "Appreciate the advice, Sheriff. I'll be on my way tomorrow morning." The sheriff seemed satisfied with this. "See that you are." He touched the brim of his hat. "Miss Dawson, ladies." With that, he departed, leaving an uncomfortable silence in his wake. "Well," Genevieve said after a moment, "shall I have this handkerchief ready for you by this afternoon? The embroidery won't take long." Liam's eyes, which had followed the sheriff out with a calculating look, returned to her. "That would be fine, thank you. I can come back around closing time if that suits." "Perfectly," she agreed, noting the small crease between his brows that suggested he was troubled by the sheriff's warning or perhaps considering ignoring it. As he turned to leave, Genevieve found herself speaking without having planned to. "Mr. Grayson, would you? That is, if you don't have other plans, would you care to join me for supper this evening, as thanks for your assistance yesterday?" The invitation surprised him as much as it surprised her. "I'd be honored, Miss Dawson." "Good." She nodded, wondering what on earth had possessed her to extend such an invitation. 6 o'clock, then. You can collect the handkerchief at the same time." After Liam left, Mary practically bounced over, her eyes wide. "Miss Dawson, did you just invite that cowboy to supper?" "I did," Genevieve confirmed, turning back to her work with a deliberately casual air. It seemed the polite thing to do given his intervention yesterday. "But what will people say?" Mary whispered, genuinely concerned. "You know how they talk already." Genevieve's hands stilled on the fabric. She knew exactly how they talked. The shopkeeper with the provocative figure and fiery hair must be a woman of loose morals. The rumors had started the day she arrived and had only grown more elaborate with time. "Let them talk," she said with more conviction than she felt. "Mr. Grayson is leaving tomorrow, and I'm simply thanking him for his kindness. There's nothing improper about that." Mary didn't look convinced, but she returned to her work without further comment. As the day wore on, Genevieve found herself second-guessing her impulsive invitation. What had prompted her to ask a virtual stranger to dine with her? Yes, he had shown her courtesy and consideration, but she'd learned the hard way that appearances could be deceiving when it came to men's characters. By the time she closed the shop and ascended to her rooms to prepare for her guest, Genevieve had nearly talked herself into sending a note to the boarding house to rescind the invitation. But something held her back, perhaps the memory of Liam wiping the spittle from her floor without hesitation, or the genuine way he spoke about his sister. She changed into a dress of forest green, high-necked and proper but more becoming than her working clothes, and set about preparing a simple meal. Her living quarters were modest but comfortable, a small sitting area with a stone fireplace, a kitchenette, a bedroom, and a tiny washroom. The furnishings were sparse but of good quality, most brought with her from the east. At precisely 6 o'clock, a knock sounded at her door. Taking a deep breath, Genevieve smoothed her skirt and went to answer it. Liam stood on her threshold, hat in hand, his dark hair neatly combed and his face freshly shaven. He'd exchanged his trail-worn clothes for a clean shirt and vest, and while he was still unmistakably a working man, there was a quiet dignity in his bearing that struck her anew. "Miss Dawson," he greeted her with a slight bow. "Please come in," she said, stepping aside. "And since this is an informal gathering, I think you might call me Genevieve." He smiled, the expression transforming his serious face. "Genevieve, then. Thank you for inviting me." As he entered, she noticed he was carrying not only his hat, but also a small paper package. "I brought something," he said, following her gaze. "Nothing fancy, just some strawberry candies from the general store. My sister always says it's improper to arrive empty-handed." The simple gesture touched her. "Your sister sounds like a wise woman. Thank you." She accepted the package and led him to the small table she'd set, already laid with her modest china and silverware. A pot of stew simmered on the stove, filling the room with savory aromas. "It smells wonderful," Liam said, remaining standing until she took her seat. "Just a simple venison stew," Genevieve replied, oddly pleased by his appreciation. "I'm afraid I'm not much of a cook compared to many of the women in town." "More accomplished than I am, I'm sure," he said with a self-deprecating smile. "On the trail, it's mostly beans and biscuits. This is a real treat." As they ate, conversation flowed more easily than Genevieve had anticipated. Liam told her about his ranch in Mesa Ridge, 300 acres of good grazing land that he and his sister had built up from nearly nothing over the past decade. "It's not the biggest spread," he explained, "but it's ours, free and clear. We run about 200 head of cattle, and we're looking to expand now that Sarah's marrying Thomas. He's a good man, knows cattle as well as I do, and he makes Sarah smile like I've never seen." "It sounds wonderful," Genevieve said, genuine warmth in her voice. "You must be very proud of what you've accomplished." "We've been fortunate," Liam acknowledged. "But what about you? If you don't mind my asking, what brought you to Silver Creek? It's not exactly the center of fashion." Genevieve hesitated. She rarely spoke about her past, but something about Liam's direct, honest manner made her want to share at least part of her story. "I came from Boston," she began. "My father was a tailor there, and I grew up learning his trade. When he died 2 years ago, I continued the business, but—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Circumstances made it necessary for me to make a fresh start. Silver Creek needed a dressmaker and land was affordable. It seemed like a good opportunity." Liam nodded, not pressing for the details she'd omitted. "It takes courage to start over in a new place, especially alone." "It was necessary," she said simply. "And has it been what you hoped? Silver Creek, I mean." The question caught her off guard with its perception. "Not entirely," she admitted after a moment. "The work is steady and I'm making a living, but I hadn't anticipated how difficult it would be to establish myself socially." Liam's eyes met hers, understanding in their depths. "Small towns can be hard on newcomers, especially—" he stopped, seeming to search for the right words. "Especially women who arrive alone and don't immediately attach themselves to a respectable man," Genevieve finished for him, a touch of bitterness in her tone. "I was going to say especially those who stand out, but yes, that too," Liam acknowledged. "It's not right, but it's how things often are." "I'm well aware," Genevieve said, rising to clear their plates. It's why your defense yesterday, while gallant, was also potentially problematic. The rumors in this town don't need any more fuel. Liam stood as well, taking his own plate to the wash basin despite her protest. What sort of rumors? Genevieve's cheeks warmed. Surely you've heard them by now. According to Silver Creek, I'm a woman of questionable virtue who must have a scandalous past to have fled here alone. Some say I was a gentleman's mistress in Boston. Others suggest I worked in a brothel. The most creative version claims I murdered a lover and escaped justice by coming west. She expected shock or embarrassment at her bluntness, but Liam merely frowned, his expression troubled. People can be cruel when faced with something or someone they don't understand. Indeed. She busied herself with washing the dishes, acutely aware of his presence beside her. The irony is that I came here for a quieter, more respectable life than I had in Boston. Instead, I've found myself with a reputation I never earned. Is that why you keep to yourself so much? Mary mentioned you rarely attend social gatherings, even church services. Mary talks too much, Genevieve sighed. But yes, it's easier to give people less to gossip about. And in truth, I've never been particularly good at fitting in. Even in Boston, I was something of an outsider. Liam accepted a dish to dry. Because of your work, partly. A woman running a business alone raises eyebrows everywhere, not just in Silver Creek, but also because I've never been conventional in my thinking. My father encouraged me to read widely, to have opinions, to question things. That's not always appreciated in a woman. Sounds like your father was an unusual man himself. He was, Genevieve agreed, a genuine smile lighting her face. Brilliant, kind, unconventional. He believed women deserved the same opportunities as men, and he raised me accordingly. It made him wonderful as a father, but somewhat ostracized in society. I'd have liked to meet him, Liam said, and the simple sincerity in his voice made something in Genevieve's chest tighten. They finished the dishes in companionable silence, then moved to the small sitting area where Genevieve served coffee and the strawberry candies Liam had brought. As they sat across from each other, the small parlor seemed to shrink, making her acutely aware of his presence, the breadth of his shoulders, the way the lamplight caught in his dark hair, the careful way he held the delicate coffee cup in his strong hands. "Oh," she said suddenly, remembering. "I've finished the handkerchief for your sister." She rose and retrieved it from her work basket, the fine linen square now adorned with the initials SM. In an elegant script, surrounded by tiny embroidered flowers, Liam took it carefully, his fingers brushing hers in the exchange. "It's beautiful. Sarah will treasure this. I hope she will." Genevieve sat again, folding her hands in her lap. "And I hope her wedding day is everything she deserves." "Speaking of the wedding," Liam said, an idea seeming to form as he spoke. "Have you ever been to Mesa Ridge?" Genevieve shook her head. "I haven't traveled much since arriving in Arizona, just to Tucson once for supplies. It's a nice little town, smaller than Silver Creek but growing. Good people for the most part." He hesitated, then continued. "I know it's an unusual suggestion, but would you consider coming to Sarah's wedding? As my guest?" The invitation was so unexpected that Genevieve could only stare at him. "Your guest? But you hardly know me." "True enough," Liam acknowledged, "but I'd like to know you better. And frankly, it sounds like you could use a change of scenery, even a brief one." "I couldn't possibly. The wedding's in 3 weeks," Liam continued. "I could come back to escort you. It's only a day's ride and you'd be staying with Sarah and me at the ranch. Everything entirely proper." "Mr. Grayson, Liam, that's very kind, but it would be highly inappropriate. People would talk." "People already talk," he pointed out gently. "And you said yourself that you've never been conventional. Why start now?" Genevieve couldn't help but laugh at his audacity. "You're very persuasive, Mr. Grayson. Is that a yes?" She shook her head, but she was smiling. "I'll think about it." "I'll take that," he said, looking pleased. "And now I should go before I completely ruin what remains of your reputation." At the door, he paused, turning back to her with a seriousness that contrasted with their light conversation of a moment before. "Genevieve, about Wilson and his friends. Be careful. The sheriff might have warned me off, but I'm not sure they'll be as easily deterred." "I appreciate your concern, but I've managed difficult men before," she assured him. "Besides, what would they possibly gain by causing trouble for a dressmaker?" Liam's expression remained troubled. "Just promise you'll be vigilant, and if you need help, Mrs. Fletcher at the boarding house knows how to reach me in Mesa Ridge." "I promise," she said, touched by his concern. "Now go before the entire town decides we're planning to elope." He grinned at that, tipping his hat. "Good night, Genevieve, and thank you for a lovely evening." After he left, Genevieve stood for a long moment with her back against the closed door, her thoughts in a whirl. Liam Grayson was unlike any man she'd met since coming west, direct yet considerate, strong but gentle, and with a respect for her that seemed to go beyond mere politeness. And his invitation to attend his sister's wedding. It was impulsive, inappropriate, and exactly the sort of adventure her father would have encouraged her to accept. The thought brought both a smile to her lips and a pang to her heart. How her father would have liked Liam, with his straightforward manner and evident integrity. But Genevieve had learned the hard way that men were not always what they seemed, and trusting too easily could lead to disaster. She touched the silver locket at her throat, a habit when she was troubled, and moved to the small writing desk in the corner of the room. From a locked drawer, she withdrew a folded newspaper clipping, yellowed with age though it was barely a year old. The headline still had the power to make her breath catch. "Boston financier's son found dead, fiancé sought for questioning." The article beneath detailed the scandal that had driven her from her home, how Charles Blackwood, son of one of Boston's wealthiest families, had been found dead in his study, apparently by his own hand, and how his fiancée, Miss Genevieve Dawson, had disappeared the same night, leading to speculation about her involvement. What the article didn't mention was Charles's gambling debts, his increasing desperation, and the violent rages that had left Genevieve bruised and frightened in the weeks leading up to his death. It didn't tell of how she'd gone to his home that night to break their engagement, only to find him already dead, a note beside him confessing his financial ruin and begging his father's forgiveness, but mentioning nothing of Genevieve. She had panicked, fleeing rather than facing the questions that would inevitably come. Charles's powerful family would never have believed she wasn't somehow responsible, and in Boston society, even the suggestion of scandal was enough to destroy a woman's life and livelihood. So she had gathered what money and possessions she could and headed west, as far from Boston as possible, hoping to outrun both the gossip and her own nightmares. But even in Silver Creek, it seemed, she couldn't escape being cast as the Temptress, the woman of mystery with a past to hide. Carefully, she refolded the clipping and returned it to its hiding place. Liam Grayson seemed like a good man, but good men could be deceived too. If he knew the truth about her past, or even the rumors of it, would he still have invited her to his sister's wedding? Would he have looked at her with that warmth in his eyes, as though seeing something in her that others missed? Better not to find out, she decided. Better to let him leave tomorrow with his good opinion intact, and for her to continue building her quiet life here, day by day, until Silver Creek either accepted her or forgot her notoriety in favor of some fresher scandal. And yet, as she prepared for bed, She couldn't help but think of Mesa Ridge, a place she'd never seen, and wonder what it might be like to start again somewhere new, somewhere without the weight of Silver Creek's judgment pressing down on her. Somewhere, perhaps, where a man like Liam Grayson might see her for who she truly was, rather than for the rumors that swirled around her name. Morning brought with it a clarity that had been absent in the emotional tumult of the previous evening. Genevieve rose early, dressed with her usual care, and descended to her shop with a renewed determination to focus on her work and put thoughts of Liam Grayson firmly aside. He would be leaving today, returning to his ranch and his life, and she to hers. The brief connection they'd shared would fade, as such things always did. Mary arrived bubbling with curiosity about Genevieve's dinner with the handsome stranger, but Genevieve deflected her questions with gentle firmness. It was simply a thank you for his assistance, Mary, nothing more. And now Mr. Grayson will be returning to Mesa Ridge, and will continue as we were. Despite her resolve, Genevieve found herself glancing at the door whenever the bell jangled, half expecting to see Liam's tall figure. But as the morning wore on with no sign of him, she told herself it was for the best. He'd likely departed at first light, eager to return to his ranch and his waiting sister. Just before noon, however, the door opened to admit not Liam but Sheriff Parker, his expression grim. "Miss Dawson, might I have a word?" Something in his tone made Genevieve's stomach tighten. "Of course, Sheriff. Is something wrong?" The sheriff glanced around the shop, which was momentarily empty of other customers. "There was an incident this morning just outside of town." Liam Grayson was ambushed on the trail to Mesa Ridge. Genevieve's hand flew to her throat. "Is he?" "He's alive," the sheriff assured her quickly. "Doc Sullivan's tending to him now. Took a bullet in the shoulder and a nasty knock to the head, but he should recover." Relief flooded through her, followed immediately by anger. "Wilson and his friends," Sheriff Parker's mouth tightened. "That would be my guess, but there's no proof." Grayson didn't get a good look at his attackers, said they fired from the trees, and he was knocked from his horse before he could draw his own weapon. "This is outrageous," Genevieve said, her voice shaking with barely controlled fury. "Will you arrest Wilson? Question him at least." "On what grounds?" the sheriff asked, spreading his hands. "I've got no evidence, just suspicion. And Wilson works for Harold Dawkins, as I mentioned before. Dawkins practically owns half the county, including Judge Freeman." The implication was clear. Even if there were evidence, justice might be hard to come by. "So nothing will be done." "I didn't say that," Sheriff Parker replied, looking offended. "I'll investigate, talk to people, see what I can find out. But in the meantime, Grayson asked me to give you a message." "A message?" Genevieve echoed, surprised that Liam would think of her in such a situation. "Said to tell you he'll be delayed in keeping his promise, but intends to fulfill it as soon as he's able." The sheriff looked puzzled. "Mean anything to you?" Genevieve nodded slowly. "Yes." "Thank you for relaying it." She hesitated, then asked, "Where is he now?" "Still at the doctor's, for the time being. Doc wants to keep an eye on him for a day or two before moving him to the boarding house." The sheriff studied her with narrowed eyes. "Miss Dawson, I don't mean to pry, but what exactly is your relationship with Grayson? He seemed mighty concerned that you get that message." "Mr. Grayson is a customer and an acquaintance, nothing more," Genevieve replied evenly. "He was kind enough to intervene when I was being harassed, and I was grateful for his assistance. That's all." The sheriff didn't look entirely convinced, but he nodded. "Well, just thought you should know, and you might want to be extra careful yourself. If Wilson is behind this, and if he thinks you and Grayson are close, he might decide to cause trouble for you too." "I appreciate the warning," Genevieve said coolly. "Will that be all, Sheriff?" After he left, Genevieve closed the shop for an hour, leaving a note on the door that she'd return at 1 o'clock. Then she made her way swiftly to Dr. Sullivan's small clinic at the far end of town, her mind racing with concern for Liam and anger at those who had attacked him. The doctor's assistant, a young man named Timothy, greeted her with surprise. "Miss Dawson, are you ill?" "No, Timothy. I've come to see Mr. Grayson. The sheriff told me what happened." Timothy hesitated. The doctor doesn't usually allow visitors when a patient is first brought in. "Please," Genevieve said quietly. "Just for a moment. I won't disturb him if he's sleeping." Something in her expression must have swayed the young man. "All right, but only for a few minutes. He's in the back room." The clinic was small but meticulously clean, with a waiting area, an examination room, and 2 recovery rooms in the rear. Timothy led her to the second of these, knocking softly before opening the door. Liam lay on a narrow bed, his left shoulder bandaged and his head wrapped in a white cloth that showed a spot of red where it covered a wound on his temple. His face was pale, his eyes closed, but his chest rose and fell steadily. "He's been in and out," Timothy whispered. "The head wound has him confused at times. I'll leave you alone, but please, don't wake him if he's sleeping." Genevieve nodded and approached the bed quietly. Liam looked vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen before, his strength temporarily subdued by injury. She stood for a moment, simply watching him breathe, reassuring herself that he was indeed alive and on the path to recovery. As though sensing her presence, Liam's eyes fluttered open. He blinked several times, focusing with evident effort. "Genevieve, I'm here," she said softly, moving closer. "The sheriff told me what happened. How are you feeling?" "Like I was trampled by a herd of buffalo," he said with a weak attempt at humor. "But I'll mend." "You should have left at first light," she chided gently. "Why did you wait?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Wanted to see you again before I left. Was heading to your shop when they jumped me just outside of town." The admission sent a wave of guilt through her. "This is my fault. If you hadn't interfered with Wilson, don't," Liam interrupted, his voice stronger now. "This isn't on you. Wilson and his type, they've always existed. Men who think their desires matter more than a woman's choice, who think strength gives them the right to take whatever they want." Genevieve sank into the chair beside the bed. "The sheriff says there's nothing he can do without evidence." "Not surprised," Liam sighed, "but I'll heal and then I'll deal with Wilson myself." "No," Genevieve said sharply, "no more violence. It solves nothing." "What would you suggest?" he asked, genuinely curious despite his pain. "I don't know yet," she admitted. "But there must be a better way than more bloodshed." Liam studied her face. "You're different, Genevieve Dawson. Most women I know would be encouraging me to defend their honor, not asking me to find a peaceful solution." "I've seen what violence does," she said quietly. "It only begets more violence, never resolution." He reached for her hand, and after a moment's hesitation, she allowed him to take it. His palm was warm against hers, calloused but gentle. "I meant what I said, you know, about coming back for you, taking you to Sarah's wedding." "You need to focus on recovering," Genevieve told him. "Forget about me and Silver Creek. When you're well enough, go home to your ranch and your sister." "Is that what you want?" he asked directly, his green eyes searching hers. "For me to forget about you?" The question caught her off guard with its simplicity and its implication. Did she want to be forgotten by this man who had shown her more genuine respect in 2 days than she'd experienced in months? Who looked at her and seemed to see past the surface to something deeper? "What I want doesn't matter," she said finally. "What matters is your safety and recovery." "That's not an answer," Liam pressed, but a spasm of pain crossed his face and he closed his eyes briefly. "You need to rest," Genevieve said, gently withdrawing her hand. "I've stayed too long already." "Will you come back?" he asked, his voice already growing drowsy as the doctor's medicines took effect. "Yes," she promised. "Rest now." Over the next week, Genevieve visited Liam daily, usually during her lunch hour when she could close the shop without losing too much business. Dr. Sullivan, initially wary of her visits, soon accepted her presence as beneficial to his patient's recovery. Liam was healing well, the bullet wound clean and free of infection, the concussion symptoms gradually subsiding. As his strength returned, so did his determination to address the wrong done to him, and he insisted, to Genevieve, whose reputation in town had suffered further from her daily visits to his sick. Despite her protests, he spoke of confronting Wilson again once he was fully recovered. "There must be another way," Genevieve argued one afternoon as they sat in the small garden behind the doctor's clinic, where Liam was taking his first steps outside. "Violence will only escalate the situation. What do you suggest?" Liam asked, not dismissively but with genuine interest in her opinion. "A man like Wilson only understands force." Genevieve considered for a moment. "What about his employer, Dawkins? Surely he doesn't condone his men attacking travelers on the open road." "That's not just dishonorable, it's bad for business." "Dawkins is a hard man by all accounts," Liam said skeptically. "And as the sheriff pointed out, he has considerable influence in this county." "Yes, but he's also a businessman. If word got out that travelers near Silver Creek were being ambushed by his men, it could damage his reputation and his profits." Liam studied her with growing respect. "You're suggesting we approach Dawkins directly, appeal to his self-interest rather than his sense of justice." "Exactly," Genevieve nodded. "It's worth trying at least before you risk another confrontation that could leave you or someone else dead." The next day, Liam was strong enough to move to Mrs. Fletcher's boarding house, though Dr. Sullivan insisted he stay in Silver Creek for at least another week before attempting the journey back to Mesa Ridge. Genevieve helped him settle into his room, acutely aware of the curious glances from Mrs. Fletcher and the other boarders. "They're wondering what a respectable dressmaker is doing, fussing over a cowboy she barely knows," Liam observed with a wry smile as Genevieve arranged his few possessions on the bedside table. "Let them wonder," she replied with more confidence than she felt. "I've long since given up trying to meet Silver Creek standards of propriety." "Have you thought more about my invitation?" Liam asked, watching her closely. "Coming to Mesa Ridge for Sarah's wedding." Genevieve busied herself straightening a blanket that didn't need straightening. "It's a kind offer, but you're afraid," Liam finished for her. "Not of what people here might say. You've already shown you can bear that. You're afraid of something else." "What is it, Genevieve?" She stilled, her back to him. "You don't know me, Liam, not really. You think you see something in me that others miss, but perhaps what they see is closer to the truth than you realize." "I don't believe that," he said quietly. "I believe you're running from something or someone, and that Silver Creek was never meant to be more than a temporary haven. I believe you're lonely but too afraid to reach out, and I believe you deserve better than hiding away in a town that doesn't appreciate you." Genevieve turned to face him, her composure cracking. "And what if you're wrong? What if there are things about me, about my past, that would change your opinion entirely?" "Try me," Liam challenged gently. "Whatever it is, it can't be worse than what I've imagined." For a long moment, Genevieve wavered on the brink of confession. How would this straightforward, honorable man react to learning that she had fled a scandal involving the suicide of her fiancé? That some in Boston still believed she had driven Charles to his death, or worse, had a direct hand in it, before she could decide. There was a knock at the door, and Mrs. Fletcher entered with fresh towels. "Everything all right in here?" she asked, her gaze moving pointedly between them. "Yes, thank you, Mrs. Fletcher," Genevieve said, stepping away from Liam's bedside. "I was just helping Mr. Grayson get settled. I'll be going now." As she left the boarding house, Genevieve knew she had narrowly escaped a moment of vulnerability that might have changed everything between them. Part of her was relieved. Another part, growing stronger by the day, regretted the lost opportunity for honesty. The next morning, a letter arrived at Genevieve's shop, delivered by one of the stable boys from the hotel. The envelope was high-quality paper, the handwriting bold and confident. Inside was an invitation, or rather, a summons to dine at the Circle D ranch that evening. It was signed Harold Dawkins. Genevieve read it twice, her pulse quickening with a mixture of apprehension and possibility. This was unexpected but potentially fortuitous. Dawkins rarely came to town, preferring to run his vast ranching empire from his homestead 10 miles outside Silver Creek. For him to invite her, a woman he had never met, to dine at his home was unusual, to say the least. Could this be the opportunity she and Liam had discussed? A chance to address the Wilson situation directly with his employer? Or was it something else entirely? She closed the shop early and hurried to the boarding house, finding Liam reading in the small parlor, his injured arm in a sling but his color much improved. "Dawkins has invited me to dinner," she announced without preamble, handing him the letter. "Tonight, at the Circle D." Liam read it quickly, his expression darkening. "This is too convenient and too dangerous. You can't go alone." "I have to," Genevieve insisted. "This might be our only chance to resolve the situation without further violence. Or it could be a trap," Liam countered. "Wilson could have told Dawkins any number of lies about you, about us. This could be his way of getting you alone, away from town." "Harold Dawkins is one of the most prominent men in the territory," Genevieve pointed out. "He wouldn't risk his reputation by harming a woman under his own roof." "You don't know that," Liam argued. "Men with power often believe they can act with impunity." "I'm going," Genevieve said firmly, "but I'll take precautions. I'll let Sheriff Parker know where I'm going and when I expect to return, and I'll bring this." She reached into her reticule and withdrew a small Derringer pistol. Liam's eyebrows rose. "You're full of surprises, Genevieve Dawson." "A woman traveling alone learns to be prepared," she said simply. "My father insisted I learn to shoot before I left Boston." "At least let me accompany you partway," Liam suggested. "I can wait nearby out of sight. If you're not back by a certain time, I can go for help." Genevieve considered this. "You're still recovering." The doctor said I should avoid strenuous activity," Liam interrupted. "Sitting on a horse watching a house isn't strenuous." Seeing the determination in his eyes, Genevieve nodded. "All right, but you stay hidden. I don't want to provoke Dawkins by appearing to bring reinforcements." They agreed on a plan, and that evening, Genevieve set out for the Circle D ranch in a hired buggy. Dressed in her finest dress of deep blue silk, a gown she had brought from Boston and had few occasions to wear in Silver Creek. Liam followed at a discreet distance, mounted on a horse borrowed from the livery stable. The Circle D was an imposing property, a large 2-story house built of stone and timber, surrounded by outbuildings, corrals, and bunkhouses for the numerous ranch hands. As Genevieve approached, lanterns illuminated the main house, giving it a deceptively welcoming appearance against the darkening sky. A ranch hand took charge of her buggy, and Genevieve was escorted into a spacious entry hall where a tall, silver-haired man awaited her. Harold Dawkins was in his 60s, with a weathered face that spoke of decades in the harsh Arizona climate. His eyes, however, were sharp and assessing as they took in his visitor. "Miss Dawson," he greeted her, his voice a deep rumble. "Thank you for accepting my invitation." "Mr. Dawkins," Genevieve replied with a poised nod. "I was intrigued by your letter. It's not often I receive dinner invitations from gentlemen I've never met." A fleeting smile crossed his face. "Direct, aren't you? Good, I have no patience for dissembling. Please join me in the dining room. We have much to discuss." He led her into a handsome room dominated by a long table set for two. The furnishings were expensive but practical, reflecting the tastes of a man who valued quality but not ostentation. A young Mexican woman served them a meal of roast beef, potatoes, and fresh vegetables, simple fare but expertly prepared. Throughout the first course, Dawkins kept the conversation light, asking about Genevieve's shop and her impressions of Silver Creek. She answered carefully, watching him for any indication of his true purpose in inviting her. It wasn't until dessert was served, a rich apple pie with fresh cream, that Dawkins finally broached the real subject. "I understand you've befriended a man named Liam Grayson," he said, setting down his fork. "A rancher from Mesa Ridge who recently had some trouble with one of my employees." "Mr. Grayson is an acquaintance," Genevieve replied cautiously. "And yes, there was an incident with your man Wilson." "Two incidents, as I hear it," Dawkins corrected. "A fight at the Eagle Saloon and then an ambush on the road to Mesa Ridge. Serious allegations, if true." "They are true," Genevieve said firmly. "Mr. Grayson was shot and nearly killed." Dawkins studied her for a long moment. "And why would Wilson have such a grievance against a passing stranger?" Genevieve met his gaze steadily. "Because Mr. Grayson intervened when Wilson and his friends were harassing me, and because Wilson is the type of man who believes he can take whatever he wants without consequences." "Strong words," Dawkins observed. "You realize Wilson has been with the Circle D for 8 years. He's one of my most reliable hands." "I'm sure he's an excellent cowboy," Genevieve conceded, "but that doesn't make him a good man. And it doesn't give him the right to harass women or shoot travelers on the open road." To her surprise, Dawkins chuckled. "You're exactly as described, Miss Dawson, forthright to the point of recklessness." "As described by whom?" Genevieve asked, a chill running through her. "By various sources," Dawkins said vaguely. "Silver Creek talks about little else these days, the beautiful dressmaker with the mysterious past and her wounded cowboy hero." Genevieve stiffened. "If you invited me here to gossip, Mr. Dawkins, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you." "Not to gossip, no." Dawkins leaned back in his chair. "To propose a solution to our mutual problem." "I wasn't aware we had a mutual problem." "But we do," Dawkins insisted. "You see, I can't have my men attacking travelers, regardless of their personal grievances. It's bad for business and damages the reputation I've worked decades to build. At the same time, I can't simply dismiss a skilled hand like Wilson without clear evidence of wrongdoing." "There was a witness to the saloon fight," Genevieve pointed out. "And Mr. Grayson's injuries are evidence enough of the ambush." "Circumstantial, at best." Dawkins waved a hand dismissively. "But I'm not interested in legal proceedings. I'm interested in resolving this situation quietly and efficiently." "How do you propose to do that?" Genevieve asked warily. Dawkins leaned forward. "I understand your reputation in Silver Creek has been problematic since your arrival, and now, with your involvement with Grayson, it's deteriorated further." Genevieve's jaw tightened. "My reputation is not the issue here, isn't it?" Dawkins raised an eyebrow. "A woman alone in a frontier town, subject to unwanted attention and gossip, sounds like an issue to me, and one I can help with." "I'm not looking for charity, Mr. Dawkins." "Not charity opportunity," he corrected. "I'm offering you a chance to start fresh. I have business interests in San Francisco, including a friend who owns one of the finest dress shops on the West Coast. He's looking for a skilled dressmaker. I could arrange an introduction, help you establish yourself there. A place where your past, whatever it may be, won't follow you." Genevieve was momentarily speechless. Of all the things she had expected from this meeting, this wasn't it. "And in return, you convince Grayson to let the matter drop. No charges against Wilson, no further confrontations. You both move on with your lives, you to San Francisco, he back to Mesa Ridge." "Why would you do this?" Genevieve asked, suspicious of his motives. "You don't know me. Why help me leave Silver Creek?" Dawkins' expression softened slightly. "Let's just say I once knew a woman in a similar position alone, misunderstood, judged by appearances rather than character. I wasn't in a position to help her then. Perhaps this is my way of making amends." There was something in his voice, a hint of old regret that rang true. Still, Genevieve hesitated. "I would need to think about this and discuss it with Mr. Grayson." "Of course," Dawkins nodded. "Take a few days. But remember, this offer won't remain open indefinitely. Wilson's temper grows shorter by the day, especially with Grayson still in town. I can control my men to a point, but eventually something will give." The implication was clear: if she didn't accept his solution, the violence would escalate. "I understand," Genevieve said. "Thank you for dinner, Mr. Dawkins. I'll consider your proposal carefully." As Genevieve's buggy pulled away from the Circle D, her mind was racing. Dawkins' offer was tempting in many ways: a fresh start in a city where she might truly escape her past, a chance to practice her craft among the elite of San Francisco society. And yet, something about it troubled her. Was he genuinely trying to help, or was this simply the easiest way to protect his ranch's reputation and his valued employee? And then, there was Liam. The thought of never seeing him again after these tumultuous days together created an unexpected ache in her chest. In a short time, he had become important to her in a way she hadn't anticipated, perhaps even in a way she had been actively avoiding since Charles's death. Liam was waiting where they had agreed, hidden among a stand of cottonwood trees a mile from the ranch. He rode out to meet her as soon as her buggy appeared on the road. "You're safe," he said, relief evident in his voice. "What happened? What did Dawkins want?" "Not here," Genevieve replied, conscious of the possibility of watching eyes. "Follow me back to town and I'll explain everything." They returned to Silver Creek as the moon rose, casting silver light over the quiet streets. At Genevieve's insistence, they met in the parlor of the boarding house rather than her private rooms, mindful of appearances despite the late hour. Mrs. Fletcher, though clearly curious, tactfully withdrew after bringing them coffee, leaving them alone to talk. Genevieve recounted her conversation with Dawkins in detail, watching Liam's expression darken as she explained the rancher's proposed solution. "So he wants to ship you off to San Francisco and me back to Mesa Ridge, all to protect Wilson and his own reputation," Liam summarized, his voice tight with anger. "That's not justice, Genevieve. That's sweeping the problem under the rug." "It's also an opportunity," she pointed out. "San Francisco has always been a goal of mine eventually. A chance to establish my business in a place that appreciates fine dressmaking." "Is that what you want?" Liam asked directly. "To leave Silver Creek, to go to San Francisco alone?" The question hung between them, laden with unspoken meanings. "I don't know," Genevieve admitted. "A week ago I would have said yes without hesitation. Now—" She trailed off, unable to articulate the change in her feelings. "Now," Liam prompted gently. Genevieve met his gaze. "Now I find myself considering possibilities I hadn't expected, connections I hadn't planned for. Like Mesa Ridge," he suggested, a cautious hope in his eyes. "Like my invitation to Sarah's wedding." "Perhaps," she acknowledged. "But there's something you should know, Liam." something I've been keeping from you from everyone in Silver Creek." This was the moment of truth, she realized. Before she could consider any future that might include Liam Grayson, he needed to know about her past, the real reason she had fled to the Arizona Territory. "I told you I left Boston because circumstances made a fresh start necessary," she began slowly. "What I didn't tell you is that those circumstances involved the suicide of my fiancé, Charles Blackwood, and suspicions that I was somehow responsible for his death." Liam's expression remained steady, showing neither shock nor judgment. "Go on," he encouraged quietly. And so she did, telling him everything about Charles's gambling and mounting debts, his increasing volatility, the bruises she had hidden beneath high collars and long sleeves. About her decision to break their engagement, her arrival at his home to find him already dead, and her panicked flight west before questions could be asked that might implicate her in his suicide. "I didn't kill him," she finished, her voice barely above a whisper, "but I did fail him in a way. I saw the signs of his desperation, but was too concerned with my own safety to help him find another path." Liam was silent for a long moment after she finished, his face thoughtful but not condemning. "Did you love him?" he finally asked. The question surprised her. "I thought I did once. But looking back, I think I loved the idea of him, the successful, charming man he presented to the world. The real Charles, the desperate, violent man he became at the end. No, I didn't love that man. I feared him." "Then you have nothing to reproach yourself for," Liam said firmly. "You didn't drive him to suicide, Genevieve. His own choices did that, and your decision to protect yourself wasn't selfish, it was necessary." His understanding, his immediate acceptance of her truth brought tears to her eyes. Most people wouldn't see it that way. If the full story came to light in Silver Creek, it would be just another chapter in the gossip that's already circulating, Liam finished for her. "But it doesn't have to define you, not unless you let it." Genevieve wiped away a tear that had escaped despite her efforts to maintain composure. "And knowing this, you still want me to come to Mesa Ridge, to meet your sister, to be part of her wedding day?" "More than ever," Liam affirmed, reaching across the small table to take her hand. "Genevieve, I know we've known each other only a short time, but I've never met anyone like you. Your strength, your integrity, your ability to start over in the face of such adversity. These are rare qualities, and I hope there could be something meaningful between us if you're willing to explore it." His words sent a cascade of emotions through her: hope, fear, a tentative joy she had thought herself incapable of feeling again. "But what about Dawkins' offer? And Wilson?" Liam's jaw set determinedly. "I have an idea about that. One that might allow us to deal with Wilson properly without endangering either of us further." "What kind of idea?" Genevieve asked warily. "A legal one," Liam assured her. "Do you trust me, Genevieve, enough to try it my way before you decide whether to accept Dawkins' offer?" She studied his face, the earnest eyes, the set of his jaw that spoke of determination rather than vengeance, the gentleness in his touch despite his strength. "Yes," she decided, "I trust you." And she realized with a clarity that was both frightening and exhilarating that she meant it. Somewhere in these tumultuous days, Liam Grayson had earned something she had thought she might never give again: her trust. And with it, perhaps, the first stirrings of something deeper, something that might eventually heal the wounds Charles had left on her heart. The next morning, Liam outlined his plan. It was simple but potentially effective. They would appeal not to Dawkins or to the local sheriff, but to the federal marshal who had jurisdiction over the entire territory. Ambushing and shooting a traveler on a public road was a serious crime that went beyond the local authorities' tendency to overlook the misdeeds of Dawkins' men. Marshal Fletcher is stationed in Tucson. Liam explained as they sat in Genevieve's shop before opening hours. He's known for his fairness and for not being influenced by local politics or powerful ranchers. If we can get word to him about what happened, he's likely to investigate properly. But how do we reach him? Genevieve asked. It's a 2-day journey to Tucson. We don't have to go ourselves, Liam said. The stage leaves for Tucson tomorrow. We can send a detailed letter explaining the situation, along with a sworn statement about the ambush. Once the marshal receives it, he'll have to act. Wilson could be long gone by then, Genevieve pointed out. Dawkins could warn him. That's a risk, Liam acknowledged. But if Wilson flees, it's as good as an admission of guilt, and a fugitive from federal justice won't find it easy to settle anywhere in the territory. They spent the morning drafting the letter, with Genevieve adding her own account of Wilson's harassment and the events leading up to the ambush. Liam then took it to be notarized by the town's notary public, a small act that gave their account an official weight. That afternoon, as they were preparing to take the letter to the stage office, Sheriff Parker entered Genevieve's shop, his expression grim. "Miss Dawson, Grayson, I need to speak with you both." Something in his tone made Genevieve's pulse quicken. "What's happened, Sheriff?" "There was an incident at the Circle D last night," he said, removing his hat. "Wilson's dead." Liam straightened, his hand instinctively moving to Genevieve's arm. "How?" "Shot during an argument with one of the other hands," the sheriff explained. "A man named Torres." Apparently, Wilson had been drinking heavily and started making threats, said he was going to finish what he started with you, Grayson. Torres, who's been with the Circle D for 20 years, tried to calm him down. Wilson drew on him, and Torres shot in self-defense. Multiple witnesses confirmed that version of events. Genevieve and Liam exchanged a startled glance. "And Dawkins?" Liam asked. "What does he say?" "He backs Torres completely. Says Wilson had become unstable, drinking too much, causing problems with the other hands. He actually asked me to convey his apologies to both of you for Wilson's actions." The news was so unexpected that Genevieve found herself momentarily speechless. Relief at the removal of the threat, Wilson posed Ward with shock at the violent end to the conflict. "I suppose that resolves the immediate problem," Liam said slowly. "It does," the sheriff agreed. "But Dawkins also asked me to tell Miss Dawson that his offer still stands. Said she should think about it carefully, that it's a genuine opportunity regardless of the Wilson situation." Genevieve nodded, though her mind was already shifting, reassessing her options in light of this new development. "Thank you for letting us know, Sheriff." After he left, Liam turned to Genevieve. "Well, that changes things. With Wilson gone, there's no immediate threat to either of us." "No," Genevieve agreed, "but it doesn't change the underlying situation. Silver Creek's opinion of me, the gossip, the limited opportunities here. Those remain the same." "So you're still considering Dawkins' offer?" Liam asked, a note of disappointment in his voice. "San Francisco instead of Mesa Ridge." Genevieve moved to the window, looking out at the dusty main street of the town that had been her home for the past 3 months. "I came west seeking a fresh start, a place where I could build a life on my own terms. Silver Creek hasn't been that place, not really. But is San Francisco the answer? Or is it just another escape, another place to hide until the past catches up with me again?" Liam joined her at the window, his reflection appearing beside hers in the glass. "What about a third option?" "Not Silver Creek, not San Francisco, Mesa Ridge, as your guest for the wedding?" Genevieve asked, turning to face him. "To start with," Liam said. "And then, we'll see. Mesa Ridge is growing, the railroad's coming through next year. There's no dressmaker there yet, but plenty of ladies who'd appreciate one. You could establish your own shop, build your own reputation. And you'd have friends from the beginning, Sarah and Thomas and me. The hesitation before he said, me, revealed more than perhaps he intended the depth of his interest, the possibility he was offering beyond mere friendship or business opportunity. You're asking me to leave one small town for another, Genevieve observed. How would Mesa Ridge be different from Silver Creek? Because you'd be coming not as a stranger with a mysterious past, but as my guest, introduced to the community properly, Liam explained. And because Mesa Ridge isn't Silver Creek. It's a younger town with more families, fewer saloons, a stronger sense of community. People there judge less and support each other more. You make it sound idyllic, Genevieve said with a small smile. It's not paradise, Liam admitted. It has its share of problems like any frontier town. But it's home, and I think it could be home for you too if you gave it a chance. The hope in his voice, the earnestness in his expression, touched something deep within Genevieve, a longing for connection, for belonging that she had suppressed for so long. San Francisco offered anonymity and opportunity, but also continued isolation. Mesa Ridge, through Liam, offered the possibility of community, of relationships, of putting down roots. I need time to think, she said finally. This isn't a decision to make lightly. Of course, Liam agreed. Take all the time you need. I still have another week before the doctor clears me to travel anyway. That evening, alone in her rooms, Genevieve wrote 2 letters. The first was to Harold Dawkins, thanking him for his offer but declining it respectfully. The second was to her father's old friend in Boston, the only person from her past with whom she still corresponded occasionally. In it, she described not the events of the past weeks, but rather the decision she faced and the unexpected feelings she had developed for Liam Grayson. Writing it out helped clarify her thoughts. When she finally put down her pen, the path forward seemed clearer than it had in months, perhaps clearer than it had been since the night she fled Boston in fear and uncertainty. The next morning, she found Liam having breakfast in the boarding house dining room. He looked up with a smile that faltered slightly when he saw her serious expression. I've made my decision, Genevieve said without preamble, taking the seat across from him. I'm not going to San Francisco. Hope flickered in his eyes. And Mesa Ridge, I'll come for the wedding, she said carefully. To meet your sister and see the town after that. We'll see. I'm not making any promises beyond that point, Liam. I need to be sure that I'm moving toward something positive, not just running away again. His smile returned, brighter than before. That's all I'm asking, for a chance to show you what could be. The rest will take care of itself, one way or another. Over the next week, as Liam regained his strength and prepared for the journey home, they spent most of their free time together. Genevieve closed her shop early on several occasions to join him for walks around Silver Creek, or for picnics in the small meadow just outside of town. They talked of their childhoods, their dreams, the books they had read, the places they hoped to see. The more she learned about Liam, the more Genevieve found to admire his straightforward honesty, his sense of responsibility, his capacity for both strength and gentleness. And beneath their conversations ran a growing current of mutual attraction, expressed in lingering glances and brief touches that sent her heart racing in a way she had almost forgotten was possible. The night before they were to depart for Mesa Ridge, Liam invited Genevieve to a proper dinner at the hotel restaurant, the finest establishment in Silver Creek, though that wasn't saying much. They drew curious stares from the other diners, but for once, Genevieve found she didn't care about the gossip that would surely follow. To new beginnings, Liam proposed, raising his glass to hers. To possibilities, Genevieve countered with a smile, clinking her glass against his. After dinner, he walked her back to her rooms. both of them conscious that this was their last night in Silver Creek, the place where they had met, where their lives had intersected in unexpected ways. At her door, Liam took her hand, his touch warm and sure. "Thank you for taking a chance on Mesa Ridge, on me." "I haven't completely decided yet," Genevieve reminded him gently. "The wedding first, then we'll see." "I know," he acknowledged, "but the fact that you're willing to consider it after everything you've been through, that means more than I can say." In the soft lamplight, his eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. Slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, he leaned closer. Genevieve met him halfway, and their lips touched in a kiss that was gentle but laden with promise of understanding, of acceptance, of a future neither had anticipated when they first met in her shop just 2 weeks ago. When they parted, Liam smiled, a trace of wonder in his expression. "Sleep well, Genevieve Dawson. Tomorrow we ride for Mesa Ridge." The journey to Mesa Ridge took a full day. Through landscapes of stark beauty that stole Genevieve's breath, towering mesas against azure skies, vast stretches of desert broken by sudden oases of green, distant mountains that seemed to float on the horizon like islands in a sea of air. They rode side by side, Liam on his chestnut gelding and Genevieve on a gentle mare he had procured for her from the Silver Creek livery. Her few possessions, along with the necessities from her shop that she couldn't bear to leave behind, followed on a pack horse. She had closed her shop temporarily, leaving a note on the door that she would return in a month, though even as she wrote it, she had wondered if that was true. "There it is," Liam said as they crested a rise in the late afternoon. "Mesa Ridge." Below them lay a small settlement nestled against the base of a dramatic red rock mesa. Unlike Silver Creek's haphazard sprawl, Mesa Ridge had a more orderly appearance, a main street lined with sturdy buildings, side streets of modest homes, a white church steeple rising above the rooftops. Beyond the town stretched the grasslands, dotted with cattle and bisected by a silver ribbon of river. "It's beautiful," Genevieve said sincerely. "Different from what I expected." "Different good or different bad?" Liam asked, watching her face. "Different good," she assured him. "It looks peaceful?" Liam smiled. "It is mostly, though Sarah would say that's just another word for boring. She's always complaining that nothing exciting ever happens here." "Sometimes boring is exactly what one needs," Genevieve replied. "After the past 2 weeks especially." They rode down into the town as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, casting the buildings in a warm, golden light. People called out greetings to Liam as they passed, friendly nods and waves that spoke of a community where everyone knew each other. Many cast curious glances at Genevieve, but the looks lacked the judgment and speculation she had grown accustomed to in Silver Creek. At the edge of town, they turned onto a well-maintained dirt road that led north toward the mesa. After another mile, the Grayson ranch came into view, a sturdy 2-story house built of local stone and timber, with a wide porch wrapping around 3 sides. Nearby stood a large barn, several corrals, and a bunkhouse for the ranch hands. As they approached, the front door of the house flew open, and a woman rushed out, tall and straight-backed, with Liam's dark hair and green eyes, though her face was softer, more rounded than his angular features. "Liam," she cried, hurrying down the porch steps. "Thank God you're back. Your letter had me worried sick, shot and nearly killed, of all things." She engulfed him in a fierce hug as soon as he dismounted, then pulled back to examine his still healing shoulder with a critical eye. "Let me see. Is it infected? Are you in pain? What did the doctor say?" Liam endured her fussing with an affectionate smile. "I'm fine, Sarah. Healing well. The doctor said I was lucky the bullet went clean through, didn't hit anything vital. Lucky." Sarah exclaimed. "I'd call it lucky if you hadn't been shot at all." She turned her attention to Genevieve, who had dismounted and was standing somewhat awkwardly beside her horse. "And you must be Miss Dawson. Liam's letter mentioned you, though it was frustratingly short on details. Please call me Genevieve," she said, extending her hand. Sarah ignored the hand and pulled her into a warm hug instead. "Thank you for taking care of my foolish brother. From what little he wrote, I gather he owes you his life." "Hardly that," Genevieve demurred, surprised but pleased by the warm welcome. "If anything, I owe him for intervening when some local men were causing problems." "Well, come inside, both of you," Sarah urged. "You must be exhausted after the journey. Thomas is out with the herd, but he'll be back for supper." "I want to hear everything, every single detail that Liam omitted from his maddeningly brief letter." The interior of the Grayson home was comfortable and well-appointed, with a large living area dominated by a stone fireplace, a dining room capable of seating at least a dozen, and a kitchen that emanated delicious aromas. Sarah showed Genevieve to a pleasant guest room on the second floor, with windows that looked out over the grasslands toward the distant mountains. "I hope you'll be comfortable here," Sarah said, helping her unpack. "It's nothing grand, but we've tried to make it homey." "It's lovely," Genevieve assured her. "Thank you for welcoming me so warmly, especially on such short notice." Sarah waved away her thanks. "Any friend of Liam's is welcome here, particularly one who helped him through such a dangerous situation." She paused, studying Genevieve with a direct gaze reminiscent of her brother's. "Though I suspect you might be more than just a friend, given the way he looks at you." Genevieve felt her cheeks warm. "We've known each other a very short time." "Time isn't always the best measure of such things," Sarah said wisely. "Sometimes you just know." She smiled a bit mischievously. "The way I knew with Thomas within a week of meeting him." "And was your brother supportive from the beginning?" Genevieve asked, curious about this aspect of Liam she hadn't yet seen. Sarah laughed. "Hardly. He was suspicious and overprotective, grilled poor Thomas mercilessly about his intentions, his background, his finances. But once he was satisfied that Thomas truly cared for me and would treat me well, he became his strongest advocate." Her expression softened. "That's Liam for you, fiercely protective of those he cares about, but fair once he's made up his mind about someone's character." The insight into Liam's nature resonated with what Genevieve had already observed: his instinctive defense of her against Wilson, his willingness to confront injustice even at personal risk, but also his thoughtful consideration of Dawkins' offer, and his respect for her independence in making her own decision. Supper that evening was a joyous affair. Thomas Mitchell, Sarah's fiancé, returned from the range, a tall, sandy-haired man with a ready smile and a quiet competence that complemented Sarah's more exuberant personality. He welcomed Genevieve with the same warmth Sarah had shown, and soon they were all seated around the table, sharing a meal of roast chicken, fresh vegetables from Sarah's garden, and homemade bread still warm from the oven. As promised, Liam and Genevieve recounted the full story of their meeting and the events that followed, though Genevieve noticed Liam tactfully omitted any mention of her past in Boston. That would be hers to share, if and when she chose to. "So Wilson's dead," Thomas summarized when they finished. "Can't say I'm sorry to hear it. Men like that give all cowboys a bad name." "And Dawkins offered you a position in San Francisco?" Sarah asked Genevieve, clearly intrigued. "That's quite something. San Francisco is supposed to be magnificent, almost like a European city, they say." "It was a generous offer," Genevieve acknowledged, "but I decided I wanted to see Mesa Ridge first to explore other possibilities." Sarah's gaze darted between her and Liam, a knowing smile playing at her lips. "Well, we're delighted to have you here for as long as you wish to stay. And the timing couldn't be better. I could use some help with my wedding dress, if you wouldn't mind lending your expertise." "I'd be honored," Genevieve said sincerely. After supper, while Sarah and Thomas cleared away the dishes, refusing all offers of help from their guests, Liam suggested a walk to stretch their legs after the long day's ride. The evening was mild, the sky ablaze with stars that seemed close enough to touch, so different from the obscured night sky of Boston. They strolled to a small rise overlooking the ranch, where a single cottonwood tree stood sentinel against the darkening sky. The lights of the ranch house glowed warmly in the distance, and beyond it, the scattered lanterns of Mesa Ridge created a small island of light in the vast darkness. "What do you think?" Liam asked as they paused beneath the tree. "Of Sarah and Thomas of the ranch of Mesa Ridge." "I think your sister is wonderful," Genevieve replied honestly. "I can see why you're so devoted to her, and Thomas seems like a good man. They complement each other well." "They do," Liam agreed. "I was wary at first. Sarah's given up so much for me. I wanted to be sure she was making the right choice for herself. But Thomas proved himself quickly. He loves her, respects her, treats her as a partner in every sense. I couldn't ask for more than that for my sister." "And the ranch is beautiful," Genevieve continued. "I can see why you love it here. There's a peace to this place, a sense of belonging." Liam's hand found hers in the darkness, his fingers intertwining with hers. "You could belong here too, you know, if you wanted to." Genevieve's heart quickened at his touch, at the promise in his words. "Liam, I'm not rushing you," he assured her quickly. "I know you need time, that we're still getting to know each other. I just want you to know that the possibility is there, whenever you're ready to consider it." Turning to face him in the starlight, Genevieve was struck anew by the steadiness in his gaze, the patience in his posture despite the clear longing in his eyes. This man, who had defended her honor without hesitation, who had respected her independence even when it might have taken her away from him, who had opened his home and his heart to her, despite the shadows in her past, he was offering her something she had almost given up hoping for. A future based on mutual respect and growing affection, rather than obligation or convention. "I'm starting to think I might belong here," she admitted softly. "With you." The smile that spread across his face at her words was like the sunrise, gradual but transformative, illuminating his features with a joy that took her breath away. He raised their joined hands, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "That's all I need to hear for now. The rest will come in its own time." The 2 weeks leading up to Sarah's wedding passed in a whirlwind of activity. Genevieve threw herself into helping with the preparations, particularly with Sarah's wedding dress, which needed significant alterations to fit properly. The two women became fast friends as they worked together, Sarah's forthright nature and warm humor drawing Genevieve out of her usual reserve. Mesa Ridge, too, welcomed her with unexpected openness. Word had spread quickly of Liam's new friend from Silver Creek, the skilled dressmaker, who had tended him after he was ambushed, and the townspeople's natural curiosity was tempered with respect and friendliness. Several of the local women, learning of Genevieve's profession, approached her about commissions, and by the end of the first week, she had enough potential business to support herself should she decide to stay. Throughout it all, Liam was a steady, reassuring presence. He showed her his ranch with evident pride, the careful breeding program he had developed for his cattle, the new windmill that brought water to the far pastures, the small apple orchard Sarah had planted 5 years ago that was finally bearing significant fruit. He introduced her to the hands who worked for them, to the neighbors whose ranches adjoined theirs, to the shopkeepers and the pastor and the schoolteacher in town. In the evenings, they would often sit on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mesa in shades of crimson and gold, talking of everything and nothing, or sometimes simply sitting in companionable silence. Occasionally, his hand would find hers, or he would brush a strand of hair from her face with gentle fingers, but he never pressed for more, respecting the gradual pace at which their relationship was developing. 3 days before the wedding, Genevieve finished Sarah's dress, a creation of ivory silk, ordered from San Francisco months earlier, with delicate embroidery at the collar and cuffs that echoed the pattern on the handkerchief Liam had brought her. When Sarah tried it on for the final fitting, she burst into tears of joy. "It's perfect," she declared, twirling before the mirror in her bedroom. "More beautiful than I ever imagined. Thomas won't be able to take his eyes off me." "That would be true regardless of what you wore," Genevieve said with a smile. "He looks at you as though you hung the moon and stars." "He does, doesn't he?" Sarah agreed happily. Then, her expression turning more serious, she added, "Liam looks at you the same way, you know." Genevieve busied herself with pinning the hem to hide the flush that rose to her cheeks. "We're still getting to know each other." Sarah hummed noncommittally. "And have you decided yet about staying in Mesa Ridge?" "Not officially," Genevieve admitted. "But I'm finding it harder and harder to imagine returning to Silver Creek." "Because of the town itself, or because of my brother?" Sarah asked shrewdly. Genevieve looked up at her new friend. "Both, I suppose. Mesa Ridge feels welcoming in a way Silver Creek never did. And Liam." She hesitated, trying to find the right words. "Liam makes me feel seen. Not as the mysterious woman from Boston or the temptress the gossips imagine, but as myself, all of myself, even the parts I've tried to hide." Sarah nodded, understanding in her eyes. "He told me, you know." "Not the details," he said. "Those were yours to share if you wished. But he told me you'd been through difficult times before coming west, that you were still healing from them. He wanted me to understand why you might be cautious, why you might need time." The revelation didn't surprise Genevieve as much as it might have once. It seemed characteristic of Liam's thoughtfulness that he would prepare his sister to be patient with her, without betraying her confidences. "I was engaged before," Genevieve said slowly. "In Boston. It ended badly." She took a deep breath. "He took his own life, and there were those who blamed me, who thought I had somehow driven him to it." Sarah's eyes widened, but she showed no sign of the horror or judgment Genevieve had feared. "How terrible for you, not just losing someone that way, but to be blamed for it afterward." "The truth is more complicated," Genevieve continued, finding that now that she had started, she wanted Sarah to understand. "Charles, my fiancé, had gambling debts, secret ones that his family knew nothing about. When they finally caught up with him, he changed, became angry, violent. I was planning to break our engagement the night he died." "So you feel guilty," Sarah surmised gently. "Not because you caused his death, but because you were going to leave him when he was already in despair." Genevieve nodded, tears threatening. "Yes. Though rationally, I know he made his choices long before that night. His death was a culmination of many decisions, not a response to any single action." Sarah stepped carefully down from the fitting stool and embraced her. "Thank you for telling me, for trusting me with this." Genevieve returned the hug, surprised at how natural it felt to be so open with someone she had known such a short time. "Your brother has a similar effect. He makes me want to be honest, even when it's difficult." "The Grayson charm," Sarah said with a wry smile as she released her. "Our father was the same way. People just naturally trusted him, told him things they might not tell anyone else. Liam inherited that quality in spades." "It's more than charm," Genevieve corrected. It's genuine interest, genuine care. He really listens without judgment. True, Sarah acknowledged. And he's been alone too long. After our parents died, he put aside everything for me, his education, his own dreams of marriage and family. Even once I was grown, he focused entirely on building the ranch, making it secure. I've been trying to convince him for years that it's time he thought of his own happiness. The idea that Liam, too, might have set aside personal dreams for the sake of duty and responsibility resonated deeply with Genevieve. She had done the same, in her way sublimating her own desires for connection and belonging into the safe, controllable world of her dressmaking. Perhaps we've both been hiding from life in our own ways, she mused. Me behind my work, him behind his responsibilities. Then perhaps you've each found exactly what you need in the other, Sarah suggested. Someone who understands what it means to put duty first, but who also recognizes when it's time to reach for something more. That evening, as Genevieve and Liam took their customary walk beneath the stars, she found herself contemplating Sarah's words. Had they indeed found in each other a recognition of shared experiences, shared values, shared understanding of sacrifice and duty? Was that the foundation of the connection she felt with him, the sense that he saw her, truly saw her in a way others had not? "You're thoughtful tonight," Liam observed as they paused at their usual spot beneath the cottonwood tree. "Tired from the wedding preparations?" "No, just reflecting," Genevieve replied. "Sarah and I had an interesting conversation today while I was fitting her dress." "Oh," Liam's tone was casual, but his eyes were attentive. "About what?" "About the past. Mine specifically." She took a deep breath. "I told her about Charles, about Boston." Liam nodded, understanding immediately. "I hope she was supportive." "Very much so," Genevieve assured him. "She also mentioned that you had prepared her in a way, that you told her I had been through difficulties without sharing the details." "I hope that was all right," Liam said, looking momentarily concerned. "I didn't want to presume to tell your story, but I also wanted her to understand that you might need time, that you weren't being deliberately distant if you seemed reserved at times." "It was more than all right," Genevieve said, touched by his consideration. "It was thoughtful, as you so often are." She paused, gathering her courage. "She also said that you had put aside your own dreams for many years to care for her and to build the ranch." A slight flush colored Liam's cheekbones, visible even in the moonlight. "Sarah talks too much sometimes." "Is it true?" Genevieve pressed gently. Liam sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I suppose, in a way. After our parents died, there wasn't much choice. Sarah was only 16, I was 22. We had a small inheritance, enough to buy a piece of land, but not enough to hire much help. Building the ranch took everything we had, all our time, all our energy, all our resources. There wasn't room for much else." "And now?" Genevieve asked. "With Sarah marrying Thomas, with the ranch established and prospering," he turned to her, his expression softening. "Now I'm beginning to remember that there's more to life than cattle and crops and balance sheets, that there are dreams worth pursuing beyond just security and stability." "What dreams?" she whispered, though she thought she knew the answer, could see it in the way his gaze lingered on her face, the way his body leaned almost imperceptibly toward hers. "A home that's more than just a house," he said quietly. "A partnership based on respect and shared values. A family, someday, God willing. And someone to share it all with, the good days and the hard ones, the successes and the setbacks, the joys and the sorrows." The simple honesty of his answer, the lack of flowery declarations or grand promises, touched Genevieve deeply. This was not a man given to exaggeration or false sentiment. When Liam Grayson spoke of dreams, of partnership, of family, he meant exactly what he said. "Those sound like good dreams," she said softly. "Worth pursuing indeed." He reached for her hand, his touch warm and sure. "Genevieve, I know it's still early days for us. I know you're still deciding about Mesa Ridge, about where you want to build your future. But I hope you might consider building it here, with me." It wasn't quite a proposal, not yet, but it was a declaration of intent, a statement of hope that invited her to look forward with him, to imagine a shared future. And to her surprise, Genevieve found she could imagine it clearly. A life here on the ranch, or perhaps in town with her own shop. Days filled with purpose and evenings filled with companionship, belonging to a community that accepted her for who she was rather than judging her for who they thought she might be. "I'm starting to think I might like that very much," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. The smile that lit Liam's face was worth every moment of uncertainty, every fear she had overcome to reach this point. He raised a hand to her cheek, his touch feather light. "May I kiss you, Genevieve Dawson?" In answer, she leaned forward, closing the small distance between them until their lips met in a kiss that felt like coming home, gentle yet certain, tender yet passionate, a promise of all that might be if they were brave enough to reach for it together. Sarah and Thomas's wedding day dawned clear and bright, the kind of perfect autumn day that seemed designed for new beginnings. The small white church in Mesa Ridge was filled to capacity, decorated with wildflowers and ribbons by the ladies of the town. Thomas, handsome in a new suit, waited at the altar with Liam beside him as best man, both men looking slightly uncomfortable but undeniably proud. Genevieve sat in the front pew, her heart full as she watched the ceremony unfold. Sarah was radiant in the ivory silk dress they had created together, her dark hair adorned with a crown of autumn blossoms, her eyes never leaving Thomas's face as they spoke their vows. But Genevieve found her gaze continually drawn to Liam, to the quiet dignity in his bearing, as he stood beside his future brother-in-law, to the unmistakable love in his eyes, as he watched his sister pledge her life to the man she had chosen. When it came time for the exchange of rings, Liam produced them with a flourish that made the congregation chuckle. Thomas's, a simple gold band; Sarah's more ornate, with a small diamond that had once belonged to their mother. The way Liam's hands clasped his sister's for a moment as he gave her away spoke volumes about the bond between them, about the years they had relied on each other, about his happiness in seeing her find love without diminishing their connection. At the reception that followed, held at the ranch under a canopy of trees strung with lanterns, Genevieve found herself welcomed as though she were already part of the family. Sarah's friends sought her out to compliment her work on the wedding dress. Thomas's family included her in their conversations as naturally as if they had known her for years. And through it all, Liam remained at her side, his hand finding hers whenever possible, his eyes meeting hers across the gathering with a warmth that made her feel both seen and cherished. As evening fell and the dancing began, Liam led her onto the makeshift floor laid out on the grass. "Have I told you how beautiful you look today?" he asked, his arm encircling her waist as they moved to the music provided by a local fiddler and his companions. Genevieve smiled up at him, feeling beautiful in the green silk dress she had made specially for the occasion. "Only about a dozen times. But I don't mind hearing it again." "Beautiful," he repeated obligingly, his eyes never leaving hers. Inside and out, they danced in comfortable silence for a while, the world around them fading as they moved together beneath the stars and lantern light. Then Liam spoke again, his voice low. "I've been thinking about what you said about building a future here, about us." "Have you?" Genevieve asked, her pulse quickening at the seriousness in his tone. "I have," he confirmed, And I realize that I don't want to rush you to push you into decisions before you're ready. But I also don't want to leave any doubt in your mind about my intentions." The music slowed, and they moved closer, their steps becoming little more than a gentle sway. "I think your intentions have been clear for some time, Liam Grayson," Genevieve said softly. "Then let me make them clearer still," he replied. "I love you, Genevieve Dawson. I think I've loved you since that first day in your shop, when you stood your ground against Wilson and his cronies with such quiet dignity. I love your strength, your resilience, your kindness that persists despite the hardships you've faced. And if you'll allow it, I'd like to spend the rest of my life showing you just how much." The simple declaration, spoken without grand gestures or flowery phrases, struck Genevieve with the force of absolute truth. This was no impulse, no fleeting attraction. This was a man who had seen her at her most vulnerable and most guarded, who had respected her independence even as he hoped for her affection, who had waited patiently for her to find her own way to him. "I love you too," she whispered, the words coming more easily than she had expected. "I love your integrity, your gentleness, the way you care for those who depend on you. I love that you really saw me when everyone else was content to judge me by appearances or rumors." Liam's arms tightened around her, drawing her closer. "Does this mean you'll stay? Make Mesa Ridge your home?" "Yes," Genevieve said, the decision feeling right in a way few choices in her life had. "I'll stay. I've already spoken with Mr. Jenkins about renting the empty storefront next to his general store for my dress shop." Liam's eyebrows rose in surprise. "You have?" "I have," she confirmed with a smile. "I signed the lease yesterday. I hope that's not presumptuous of me." "Presumptuous?" Liam laughed, the sound joyful in the evening air. "It's the best news I've heard since you agreed to come to Sarah's wedding." His expression sobered slightly. "But you should know, you don't need to work if you don't want to. The ranch is doing well, more than well enough to support." Genevieve placed a finger against his lips, silencing him gently. "I know, but I love my work, Liam. It's part of who I am, and Mesa Ridge needs a good dressmaker." "Of course," he agreed immediately. "I would never ask you to give up something that brings you such satisfaction. I just wanted you to know that the option exists." His immediate understanding, his respect for her independence and her passion for her craft, only confirmed what Genevieve already knew, that this man, unlike Charles or any other she had known, saw her as a whole person with her own dreams and needs, not as an accessory to his life or a reflection of his status. "Then perhaps," Liam continued, a hint of nervousness entering his voice for the first time, "you might consider one more change to your plans, a slightly different name on the sign of your new shop, perhaps." Genevieve's heart skipped a beat. "What name did you have in mind?" Liam took a small step back, just enough to reach into his pocket while still holding her close with his other arm. From it, he withdrew a simple gold ring with a modest diamond that caught the lantern light. "Genevieve Grayson has a nice sound to it, don't you think?" Tears sprang to Genevieve's eyes, not tears of sorrow or fear as had so often been the case in recent years, but tears of joy, of homecoming, of finding at last what she had almost stopped believing existed, a love based on mutual respect and genuine understanding. "It does," she agreed, her voice trembling slightly. "It sounds perfect." Liam's smile was radiant as he slipped the ring onto her finger. "Is that a yes, then?" "Yes," Genevieve whispered, and then more firmly, "Yes, Liam Grayson, I will marry you." Around them, the reception continued, Sarah and Thomas dancing nearby, friends and neighbors laughing and celebrating, the fiddler striking up a livelier tune. But for Genevieve and Liam, the world had narrowed to just the two of them, to this moment of promise and possibility, to the future they would build together in Mesa Ridge. Later, as the celebration wound down and guests began to depart, Sarah sought them out, her face flushed with happiness and dancing. "There you are. Thomas and I are about to leave for our honeymoon." "I wanted to," she stopped abruptly, her gaze falling on Genevieve's hand where the diamond caught the light. Did you?" She looked between them, her eyes widening. "If you're asking if I've asked Genevieve to marry me, and if she's done me the great honor of accepting, then yes," Liam confirmed, his arm around Genevieve's waist. Sarah let out a cry of delight and flung her arms around them both. "I knew it. I told Thomas just yesterday that you two were perfect for each other." She pulled back, her eyes shining with happy tears. "When? When will the wedding be?" "We haven't decided yet," Genevieve admitted. "We only just got engaged a few minutes ago." "Well, don't wait too long," Sarah advised, still beaming. "Life's too short to postpone happiness." "Wise words from the woman who made me wait 6 years to meet Thomas," Liam teased. "That was different," Sarah protested. "I needed to be sure he was worthy of me." Thomas joined them, slipping an arm around his new wife's waist. "Who's worthy of you?" "You are, apparently," Liam informed him. "After a 6-year vetting process." Thomas laughed. "Worth every minute of the wait." He noticed the ring on Genevieve's finger and his face broke into a wide smile. "Well, look at that. Congratulations to you both." As Sarah and Thomas departed amid a shower of rice and well-wishes, Genevieve and Liam stood arm in arm, watching the newlyweds climb into the buggy that would take them to Tucson for a week's honeymoon. "Happy?" Liam asked softly, his lips close to her ear. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Genevieve replied truthfully. "And a little overwhelmed by how quickly life can change. 6 weeks ago, I was alone in Silver Creek, resigned to a life of isolation and whispers. Now I'm here with you, planning a future I never dared to imagine." "Life has a way of surprising us," Liam agreed. "Sometimes for the worse, but sometimes," he squeezed her hand where his mother's ring now rested, "sometimes for the infinitely better." As the last of the guests departed, and the ranch hands began clearing away the remains of the celebration, Liam and Genevieve walked once more to their cottonwood tree. The night was clear, the stars spread overhead like diamonds on velvet, the distant howl of a coyote the only sound breaking the peaceful silence. "I've been thinking," Liam said as they stood beneath the tree's spreading branches. "About Charles, about what happened in Boston." Genevieve tensed slightly. "What about it?" "Just that you don't need to worry about the past following you here," Liam assured her, his arms encircling her waist. "Mesa Ridge isn't Boston or even Silver Creek. People here judge on actions, not rumors. And even if word somehow reached us from the East, you have friends here now, people who know your true character. You're not alone anymore, Genevieve." The simple statement touched her deeply. She had been alone for so long, even before Charles's death. Even in the midst of Boston society carrying her secrets and her fears like a shield between herself and the world. But here, with Liam, she could finally lay that burden down, could finally step into the light of being known and loved for who she truly was. "No," she agreed, leaning into his embrace. "Not alone anymore, and neither are you." Liam's kiss was tender, a promise sealed beneath the stars. As Genevieve returned it, she felt the last of her doubts and fears dissolving, replaced by a certainty that had been building since the moment a tall cowboy had entered her shop and seen beyond her appearance to the woman beneath the woman who had been waiting, all this time, to be truly seen. In Mesa Ridge, she had found not just a man who loved her, but a community that welcomed her, a purpose that fulfilled her, and a home where she belonged. The journey had been long and at times painful, but standing here in Liam's arms, Genevieve knew with absolute certainty that every step had led her exactly where she was meant to be. 3 months later, on a crisp winter morning with the mesa dusted in snow, Genevieve Dawson became Genevieve Grayson in the same small church where Sarah had married Thomas. The ceremony was simple but deeply meaningful, attended by the friends they had made in Mesa Ridge and a few who had traveled from further afield, including, to Genevieve's surprise, Harold Dawkins from the Circle D. "I never did get to make things right with that woman I told you about," he explained when he approached them at the reception afterward. "But seeing you two, knowing I had some small part in bringing you together by not interfering when perhaps I should have. Well, it feels like a kind of atonement." Liam shook the older man's hand. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Dawkins, and for your wedding gift." Dawkins had sent a pair of fine horses as a present, a gesture both generous and fitting for their life on the ranch. "Just be good to each other," Dawkins advised. "That's all that really matters in the end." Genevieve's dress shop, Grayson Designs, opened 2 weeks after the wedding, quickly becoming a favorite gathering place for the women of Mesa Ridge. Unlike in Silver Creek, where suspicion and gossip had colored every interaction, here Genevieve found herself welcomed into the community's heart, her skills appreciated, her company enjoyed for itself rather than as a source of speculation. She and Liam settled into a rhythm of shared life that felt both new and somehow familiar, as though they had been destined for this partnership all along. Mornings began with breakfast together before Liam rode out to work the ranch. Evenings ended with quiet conversations by the fire, sharing the events of their day and their dreams for the future. They were building something together, not just a marriage or a business, but a life woven of mutual respect, shared joy, and deepening love. A year to the day after they met, Genevieve and Liam stood once more beneath the cottonwood tree, now their special place. The spring air was warm, the grasslands stretching green and vibrant around them, the mesa glowing red-gold in the setting sun. "I have something to tell you," Genevieve said, a smile playing at her lips as she took Liam's hand and placed it gently on her abdomen. "Something wonderful." Liam's eyes widened, a look of wonder spreading across his face. "A baby, are you sure?" Genevieve nodded, her heart full to bursting with happiness. "Dr. Wilson confirmed it yesterday. We're going to have a child, Liam, in about 7 months according to his estimation." Liam let out a whoop of joy and swept her into his arms, lifting her off her feet in a careful, exuberant embrace. "A baby, our baby." As he set her gently back on her feet, Genevieve saw tears glistening in his eyes. "Are you happy?" she asked, though his reaction had left little doubt. "Happy doesn't begin to describe it," Liam said, his voice thick with emotion. "Grateful, blessed, overwhelmed. A year ago I was alone, focused solely on the ranch and Sarah's future. Now I have you, a thriving business, a child on the way. It's more than I ever dared to hope for." Genevieve touched his face tenderly. "For me as well. When I left Boston, I thought I was running away, just trying to survive. I never imagined I was actually running toward something, toward you, toward this life, toward this love." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Liam drew Genevieve close, his hand resting protectively over the place where their child grew. "From the moment I saw you in that shop in Silver Creek, standing tall despite the whispers, I knew there was more to you than the rumors suggested. I saw your strength, your dignity, your heart." "And I saw yours," Genevieve replied softly. "Beyond the strength and the courage, I saw your gentleness, your honor, your capacity for love." Together they watched as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, the ranch house lights glowing warmly in the distance, beckoning them home. Whatever challenges the future might hold, They would face them together, no longer the Temptress and the Cowboy of Silver Creek gossip, but partners, lovers, soon to be parents, building a life of substance and meaning in the place where they had both, at last, found belonging. For Genevieve Grayson, formerly Dawson, the journey from Boston to Silver Creek to Mesa Ridge had been long and at times painful, but standing here in the arms of the man who had seen her heart when others saw only her body, she knew with absolute certainty that every step had led her exactly where she was meant to be. Home,